I always thought life rewarded consistency. Work hard, stay humble, treat people well, and eventually things fall into place. That was the philosophy my father drilled into me when I was young. And for most of my life, it worked. My name is Ethan Ward, and by the time I turned 35, I had built a comfortable life, a successful construction development company, a house large enough to echo when you walked through it, and a savings account my accountant kept praising me for. I wasn't flashy, not the type to buy sports cars or yachts, but I lived well. And I believed naively, it turns out that if you offered someone security, loyalty, and a good home, they wouldn't go looking for anything else. That belief shattered the day I learned what my wife, Lena, had really been doing behind my back. I met her during a charity event I sponsored downtown. She was stunning in that effortless way that stops conversations. Smart, charming, someone who seemed genuinely interested in who I was rather than what I owned. It felt refreshing to meet a woman who didn't seem impressed by money, mostly because she barely asked about mine. She talked about books, travel, and her job as an interior designer. When we started dating, she insisted on paying her share. When we moved in together, she resisted when I suggested I'd cover most expenses. I don't want to be a burden, she said with that soft, warm smile I thought was sincerity. I thought I'd found someone who saw me, not the bank account attached to my name. Relationships are built slowly, but trust is built even more slowly. With her, though, trust came easily. Too easily. We married after 2 years of dating, and I didn't hesitate to put her name on the house, the vehicles, and even add her as an optional signatory for my business accounts in case of emergency. Everyone close to me told me I was moving too fast. My sister even said, "Ethan, she's beautiful. But don't confuse beauty with honesty." I brushed it off, convinced they just didn't know her the way I did. For the first year, everything seemed perfect. She decorated the house with such grace that it felt like living in the pages of a magazine. She surprised me at the office with lunches, asked about my projects, and told me she was proud of what I'd accomplished. I was proud too, mostly because I finally felt like I'd balanced my personal and professional life. But life has a strange way of revealing the truth slowly, like cracks beneath paint. At first, I didn't notice them. Or maybe I did, but I didn't want to. It started with small things. Lena began staying out late, claiming she had new clients who preferred evening consultations. She started dressing differently, bolder, more revealing, and shrugged it off as professional image. She became protective of her phone, a habit she never had before. I told myself she was just settling into her career. I told myself a loving husband supports growth. And I did because I assumed we were on the same team. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't her teammate. I was her foundation, her stepping stone. Something to stand on, not stand beside. The first undeniable sign arrived on a Wednesday afternoon when I came home early from a canceled meeting. Lena wasn't home, but her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. Normally, I never snooped. I hated the idea of invading privacy. But the screen was glowing with an unsent email draft, and my name was in the subject line. Curiosity tugged at me. I approached, telling myself I'd only glance. Just one glance. Just enough to know why my name was there. That moment changed everything. The email was addressed to someone named T. The message read, "He's finalizing the expansion deal this month. When the funds clear, I'll be able to move everything into the new account. After that, we're free." Just a little longer. My chest tightened. At first, I didn't understand. New account. Free from what? Free from me. I stood there replaying it in my head until the pieces began forming a picture I didn't want to see. The woman I married wasn't planning a future with me. She was planning an exit, one that involved my hard-earned money. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. I needed clarity, proof. I needed to know whether this was a misunderstanding or the beginning of the end. So I played dumb. I kissed her when she came home. I listened to her stories about clients, and I watched her closely. Within days, the truth leaked through every crack she tried to seal. She smiled too brightly. She avoided eye contact when I asked about her day. She showered me with affection, as if overcompensating for guilt or distraction. And every night, she went to bed later than claiming she needed to catch up on emails. I lay awake pretending to sleep, watching the dim light under the door of her office flicker until 1, 2, sometimes 3 in the morning. There's a strange pain that comes with knowing your life is no longer real, that your marriage is a performance, your home a stage, and your spouse an actor with a script you never got access to. That pain sank into my chest like a stone, heavy enough to drag me under if I didn't hold myself together. The real breaking point came 2 weeks later, when I learned who T really was, or rather, what he meant to her. And that part of the story is where everything shifted from betrayal to humiliation, to anger so cold it didn't feel like emotion at all. And that's where the real story begins. I discovered who T was on a night that should have been uneventful. The kind of night where I would normally come home, eat leftovers, and collapse on the couch after a 12-hour workday. But that evening, something in me refused to follow routine. I told my assistant I needed a few hours of silence and drove home earlier than usual, rehearsing in my head how I might talk to Lena without revealing what I'd already found. When I walked inside, the house was quiet, too quiet, in that peculiar way that feels staged. Her car was in the driveway, shoes by the door, but the air felt like no one had actually lived in the space all day. I made my way upstairs, listening for music, a shower, anything. Then I heard it faintly through the closed door of her office, her voice low, careful, almost whispering. I stood there, unsure whether I should knock or walk away. Then curiosity, anger, fear, all the emotions I'd kept buried suddenly surged, and I leaned closer. I didn't hear much, just a few clipped phrases. Soon, he won't know. Just trust me. No, he's clueless. And then laughter. Not the laugh she used with me. Not soft or sweet. It was sharper, younger, like a version of herself she'd reserved for someone else entirely. I backed away as quietly as I could and went to the bedroom to wait, stomach knotted so tightly I could barely breathe. An hour later, she emerged, smiling at me like nothing was wrong, kissed my cheek, and said she needed to step out for a bit to pick up something for a client. She left wearing a dress I hadn't seen before. Something short and shimmering that looked more like a date night outfit than business attire. The second the door shut, I grabbed my keys. I wasn't proud of it, but I decided to follow her. She drove across town to an apartment complex too run down and too cramped to match anyone she claimed was a client. She entered Building C, and 10 minutes later, the lights flicked on in a second-floor corner unit. That was when I saw him. A man stepped into view through the blinds, someone younger, maybe late 20s, tall, shirtless, holding a beer bottle. He greeted her with a kiss so familiar it made my stomach twist. My wife. My beautiful, thoughtful, supportive wife wrapped in the arms of a guy who looked like he spent more time at a gym than at a job. I sat there in my truck, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. And as I watched her laugh and walk deeper into the apartment, I felt something inside me crack, not just from the realization she was cheating, but because it suddenly made sense. The late nights, the secrecy, the new clothes, the email. T wasn't a business partner or friend. T was him, and he wasn't just some fling. He was part of her plan. I spent nearly an hour sitting in that parking lot, debating whether to storm up the stairs and confront them. But anger makes people stupid, and I didn't want to be stupid. I wanted to understand. I wanted to expose the truth before I acted. So I drove home, shaking, replaying the scene in my head over and over until it became a blur of betrayal and humiliation. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went through our bank statements, business accounts, and anything I thought she could have touched. And that's when the second truth surfaced. She had already opened the new account she mentioned in the email, under both our names, but she was the only one depositing or withdrawing anything. She had been moving money gradually, tiny amounts that wouldn't catch the eye unless you looked line by line. It wasn't enough to bankrupt me, but it was enough to make one thing very clear. She wasn't planning to take a portion. She was planning to take everything she could get her hands on before leaving. And she was planning to leave with him. The next few days were an excruciating performance. We woke up together, ate breakfast, exchanged smiles, and kissed goodbye as though we were a perfectly normal couple. Inside, though, every moment felt like a countdown. I started documenting everything: emails, transfers, and photos of her entering the apartment building. I contacted my lawyer, who advised me not to confront her yet. He said betrayal was emotional, but theft was legal, and if she was planning something, we needed to let her keep going just long enough to catch the full scope of it. So I played along. I hugged her back when she hugged me. I asked about her clients. I complimented her outfits even when I knew exactly who she was wearing them for. Every night she went to bed late, I pretended to sleep. And every night she stayed out working, I watched the GPS on her car tracker, something she didn't know my vehicles had. Then came the night everything escalated. I was in my office reviewing invoices when a text popped up on my phone from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. A photo of Lena, asleep on someone's bare chest. His arm wrapped around her waist. The timestamp was from an hour earlier. My throat closed. My mind went blank. And then another text came in. You should know what she's doing. She's using both of us. I stared at the message, confused, my pulse thundering in my ears. Both of us? Before I could type a response, another message arrived. If you want the truth, meet me tomorrow, 6 p.m., behind the apartment complex. I didn't know if it was a trap. I didn't know if it was the guy trying to taunt me. But something about the tone didn't feel like mockery. It felt like desperation. I didn't sleep again that night. My brain raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. And by the next evening, as I stood behind that apartment complex at exactly 6 p.m., I realized something I had never expected in my entire life. The man who had been sleeping with my wife wasn't the real antagonist. He was about to become my informant. And what he told me would unravel everything I thought I knew about Lena and about myself. The man waiting for me behind the apartment complex wasn't what I expected. I thought he'd show up arrogant, defensive, maybe ready to throw a punch the minute he saw me, but instead he looked nervous, pacing with his hands shoved into the pockets of a worn hoodie. When he turned toward me, the dim light caught his face, and for a moment we just stared at each other, two men who should have been enemies but were instead bound by the same woman's lies. He introduced himself as Travis, the T from her emails, the same man I'd watched through the blinds holding her like she was something precious. But up close, he didn't look like someone in love. He looked betrayed, exhausted, like someone who had been running in circles without knowing why. He told me he had no idea she was married. When they met, she told him she was separated, that her husband was controlling, emotionally distant, barely home. She painted herself as a victim, lonely and desperate for affection. It was the same act she used on me in the beginning: soft voice, sad eyes, a story that pulled at your sympathy until you wanted to protect her from the world. He fell for it just like I did. He wasn't proud of the affair once he discovered the truth, but anger had pushed him to dig deeper. 2 weeks earlier, he noticed she kept disappearing at random times, always carrying a certain folder with her. When he asked, she brushed him off, saying it was personal paperwork. Curiosity got to him, and he looked inside while she was showering. Inside were bank receipts, transfers, withdrawals, all under both her name and mine. At first he didn't understand what it meant, but then he saw the pattern. She was moving money steadily. Not just small amounts either, larger ones lately. Transfers timed perfectly with nights she claimed to be working late. She told him she was saving for their future, that she wanted them to move in together soon. That once she finalized some legal issues with her husband, everything would be ready. But the financial documents didn't look like someone preparing for a new life with a partner. They looked like someone preparing to disappear. Travis confronted her 3 days before he contacted me. That was when everything fell apart. Instead of panicking or apologizing, she got angry, furious, telling him he had no right to go through her things. She said he was paranoid, that he was ruining everything, that he was just supposed to wait. She stormed out and stayed gone for 2 nights. When she returned, she acted as if nothing happened, except now she kept her belongings with her at all times. No more folders lying around, no more receipts in drawers. That was when he realized he couldn't trust her. And then, somehow, he found out who I was. He didn't tell me how at first, just that he knew she'd lied to both of us, and if he didn't warn me, he'd feel like he was helping her get away with something. I wasn't sure whether to believe him, but then he handed me a flash drive. I copied everything I could before she took the documents, he said, voice shaking like someone who'd been holding fear in too long. If you think she's just cheating, you're not seeing the whole picture. She's planning something bigger. She said she'd be gone by the end of the month. His words felt like a punch. The end of the month. That was 9 days away. 9 days until she planned to vanish with whatever she hadn't stolen yet. I took the flash drive home, hands trembling so violently I could barely fit it into the USB port. When I opened the files, my breath left my body. Documents, screenshots, voice memos she'd sent him, some explaining how she needed him to just trust the process, others referencing final withdrawals, and one audio clip that shattered whatever hope I had left. In it, she said she wasn't sure whether she'd leave with him or on her own because men are interchangeable. But money isn't. She laughed lightly at the end. The same laugh she used with me the night I first met her at the charity event. That was the moment I understood that neither of us mattered to her. We were roles, tools, to different resources she used for two different purposes. I am for financial security, he for thrills and affection. She never intended to stay with either of us. Hearing her voice talk about us like we were disposable made something in me harden completely a cold, sharp clarity replacing heartbreak. I sat there for hours listening to every file, studying every receipt, building a timeline of her deception piece by piece. By 3 a.m., I had a full picture. This wasn't just infidelity. This was calculated exploitation. She waited until after our wedding to attach herself to my accounts legally. She slowly tested how much money she could move without raising flags. She calculated the perfect moment to leave right after my company's expansion deal was approved, when the influx of funds made the transfers harder to track amidst legitimate expenses. She had even prepared fake invoices. My lawyer, stunned, told me we could pursue criminal charges if I collected a bit more evidence. That meant I had to keep pretending. I had to act like the doting husband a little longer. Pretend not to know about the affair. Pretend not to know about the money. Pretend everything was normal while every instinct screamed to throw her out of the house. The next week became a performance worthy of an award. I made her breakfast. I complimented her outfits. I told her I missed her. And every night she slipped out, believing I was as gullible as the day I met her. But the most unbelievable part wasn't the deception, it was how skilled she was at pretending nothing was wrong. The very night I heard her voice say men were interchangeable, she crawled into bed beside me like she had no worries in the world. She kissed my shoulder, whispered that she loved me, and fell asleep only minutes later. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, feeling like I was lying next to a stranger. No, not a stranger, a predator. And I finally understood that the woman I married was not the woman I thought she was. But nothing prepared me for the discovery I made next. Because just when I thought I had uncovered every secret, I learned that her plan didn't stop with stealing money. She was planning something far worse, something that could have ruined not just my finances, but my entire life. And I discovered it by accident, on a day I wasn't even supposed to be home. I wasn't supposed to be home that Friday afternoon. Normally, I'd be on site at the expansion project, overseeing contractors and verifying that the materials being delivered matched the invoices. But a sudden storm shut everything down. I drove home early, expecting an empty, silent house. Lena always had client meetings on Fridays. But as soon as I opened the front door, I heard something strange. Not voices, not footsteps, paper, the soft shuffle of paper being sorted quickly, urgently. I froze, listening. It was coming from my office. My office where I kept documents she had no reason to touch. I stepped quietly down the hallway, each breath slow and controlled, and when I pushed the door open just an inch, I saw her. Lena stood at my desk, her back to me, rifling through drawers with one hand while holding a stack of folders in the other. Not her folders. My company's financial records, the ones I kept locked away. They contained sensitive deal information. My first instinct was to confront her, but something made me stay hidden. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the realization that whatever she was doing wasn't spur of the moment. It was intentional, precise. She found a specific envelope, opened it, and photographed the contents page after page. Then she placed everything back with the same neatness I once admired in her. For a moment, she stood still, staring at the desk with a look that wasn't panic or guilt but calculation. She wasn't stealing those documents. She was gathering information. I stepped back silently, heart pounding so fast it made my vision blur. When I heard her heels clicking toward the hallway, I slipped into the laundry room and pulled the door shut. She walked past without knowing she'd just been caught in the middle of something far darker than an affair. Minutes later, the front door closed, and her car started in the driveway. When the sound faded, I went straight to my office, opened the drawer she had touched, and immediately saw what was missing: a contract draft connected to the expansion deal, one that outlined the timeline of incoming funds, distribution, and the additional credit line approved by the bank. My lawyer's words echoed in my mind. If she's gathering financial documents, she's not just planning to leave. She's positioning herself to claim assets or file something before disappearing. I didn't know what angle she was playing, but I intended to find out. I checked the security footage, something she didn't even know existed, since the cameras were disguised within the smoke detectors in the office area. And what I saw made my stomach drop. She wasn't alone the last time she had been in this room. 2 days earlier, while I was at a meeting, she brought someone into my office. Not Travis, not a friend, A man in his 40s wearing a suit, carrying a briefcase. They whispered the entire time. She handed him documents. He gave her a folder in return. She signed something. He left. I replayed the footage 5 times, zooming in. The document was unmistakable, some kind of petition form. Legal paperwork, and her signature was at the bottom. My lawyer confirmed what I feared. It looked like she was preparing a malicious divorce filing. One staged to make me look fraudulent, controlling, possibly even abusive, anything that could grant her immediate access to assets or emergency protective orders. If she filed before I could, and if she manipulated the right evidence, she could temporarily freeze my accounts or my business operations until the court hearing. She wasn't just stealing. She was laying the foundation to portray herself as a victim so she could drain everything without resistance. But the part that made my blood run cold wasn't the divorce tactic. It was the final page the man gave her, a page with my name on it next to the word investigation. She was framing me. She had been building a case. And if I hadn't walked in early that day, I might never have known until it was too late. That night, while she went out again, I searched every bag she owned, every drawer she touched, and eventually I found it tucked inside a makeup box she rarely used. The papers she signed, the fabricated incident reports, screenshots of edited text conversations, photos she staged showing small bruises on her arm she must have created with makeup, a journal filled with lies written in her handwriting, describing a husband who controlled her, restricted her finances, monitored her friendships, even threatened her when she didn't obey. Word by word, line by line, she had created an entire fictional version of our marriage, one designed to destroy me, and she had the nerve to date another man while doing it. I stared at those pages long enough for my hands to shake uncontrollably. When my lawyer saw everything, he told me something that flipped my rage into strategy. She's about to make her move. You need to make yours first, and you need to do it before she files. But timing was everything. If I confronted her too early, she'd disappear with the money already moved. If I waited too long, she'd file and claim I manipulated evidence. I needed one thing she hadn't given me yet, her final action. The last piece of evidence proving intent. And I got it sooner than expected. The next evening, she came home unusually cheerful, humming as she cooked dinner, something she rarely bothered with anymore. She kissed me, told me she was excited for a new chapter, and poured us both wine. I pretended to drink mine. She drained hers fast, too fast. And that was when the real shock happened. Her phone lit up with a message preview she didn't notice. It read, "Tomorrow night. Once the last transfer goes through, you're done. Bring the documents. We leave at midnight. Tomorrow night, midnight." She was leaving, moving the final money, delivering the forged documents, filing the case, running. I finally had the timeline. And as she laughed at something on TV beside me, completely unaware of the evidence stacked against her, I realized I was no longer heartbroken or confused. I was done, and I was ready. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what would happen the night she tried to escape. Because she wasn't the only one who planned something. I did too. And when midnight came, everything she built on lies collapsed in a way she never saw coming. Midnight arrived like a slow breath held too long. I sat in my truck down the street with the engine off and my headlights dark, watching my own house with a calmness that felt unreal after weeks of choking tension. My lawyer, 2 private investigators, and a court officer were stationed nearby waiting for my signal. Everything was timed to the minute. Everything depended on her making the first move. And at 11:53 p.m., I saw her silhouette through the upstairs window, moving quickly, nervous in a way she never showed around me. She grabbed a duffel bag stuffed full, zipped it with force, checked her phone twice, then rushed downstairs. My cameras caught every second. She turned off the lights, locked the front door, and hurried toward her car. She didn't look back, not once. When she opened the trunk to toss her bag inside, Travis stepped out from behind the oak tree by the driveway. She froze. For the first time since I met her, I watched fear flash across her face, pure and unfiltered. She whispered something sharp, angry, but he didn't yell back. He just shook his head, defeated and drained. He told her he knew everything now, that she had planned to use him exactly the same way she used me. She went pale, then furious, grabbing his shirt and hissing that he had ruined her timing. He shoved her hands off and told her I knew the truth, that I had all the documents, that there was no future for her left. She panicked then, trying to pull out her phone, but that was when I stepped out of the shadows. Her breath caught. For a split second, She looked like a child who'd been caught stealing. Then, just as fast, the mask slid back on, and she put on a fake, trembling smile, whispering my name like she was relieved to see me. She tried to play innocent, confused, emotional. She even tried to run into my arms. I didn't move. The distance between us felt like a canyon she could never cross again. I told her I knew about the affair, the money, the fake documents, the forged signatures, the staged bruises, the divorce petition accusing me of emotional abuse, the attempt to implicate me in fraud, the plan to drain everything once the final transfer cleared tomorrow. She denied it all, of course, even while her voice cracked, even while her pupils darted left and right looking for an escape route, even when I told her I had video footage, audio files, her journal pages, the folder from the man she met in my office, everything. She tried to switch tactics, her voice softening into a tone she once used on me when she wanted something. She said we could work through this, that she never meant for things to go this far, that she was overwhelmed and confused and that Travis meant nothing. Travis laughed bitterly from behind her. She spun toward him and snapped at him to leave, but then the court officer stepped into view alongside my lawyer. That was when her confidence shattered completely. She stumbled back, grabbing the edge of the trunk, breathing fast like someone running out of lies. The officer served her the restraining and freeze order, everything prepared after my lawyer filed earlier that day with all the evidence. Every account she touched was frozen. Every attempt to remove money was blocked. She couldn't flee. She couldn't file. She couldn't lie her way out. She tried anyway. She screamed that I was manipulating things, that I framed her, that I was abusive, that I was controlling. She pointed at the staged bruises she created herself, insisting they were real. The officer didn't react. My lawyer didn't react. Travis didn't react. They all knew the truth now. As she realized no one believed her, she collapsed into silence, her chest heaving, mascara streaking. Then her voice dropped to something I'd never heard from her before, pure venom. She said I ruined her life, that I owed her everything, that she deserved the money because I never loved her the way she needed. I finally told her the truth. I did love her, more than she ever deserved. I believed in her, trusted her, built a future with her, and she used my loyalty as a tool to carve out her escape. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her eyes said enough. They weren't remorseful, or ashamed, or heartbroken. They were angry that she lost, completely and irreversibly. The court officer escorted her away to process the legal orders. She didn't look back at me or at Travis. Travis stayed behind after they left, staring at the ground. I told him he didn't owe me anything. He said he wasn't looking for forgiveness, just closure. He apologized one last time and walked off into the dark, leaving me standing in the driveway in the cold midnight air, finally free from the woman who had almost destroyed my life. In the weeks that followed, everything unfolded like a slow and winding clock. Lena tried to fight the charges. She claimed innocence. She claimed victimhood, but every lie she told was countered with evidence. Her staged photos, her journals, her edited screenshots, her recordings, her financial transfers, her meetings with the legal consultant. She had built a perfect trap. Unfortunately for her, she forgot that stepping into your own trap still counts. The divorce was finalized with no payout, no assets, no alimony, nothing. I recovered every cent she moved. Her relationship with Travis ended the same night she was caught. She tried contacting him months later, but he never responded. Last I heard, she moved to another state, bouncing between short-term jobs, her charm no longer enough to rebuild what she lost. As for me, people ask if I regret marrying her. I don't. Regret implies I didn't learn anything. And I learned everything. I learned that love without awareness is blindness. That trust without caution can be weaponized. That charm can be a mask sharper than any blade. And I learned that sometimes the person who lies beside you is more dangerous than any enemy you see coming. She used me for wealth. She used someone else for fun. And in the end, she lost both. I survived. I rebuilt. And I reclaimed my life piece by piece, one truth at a time.